When Phil Ivey, generally regarded as the world's best poker player, did not show up to play the $25,000 WSOP Heads-Up No Limit Hold'em Championship, the poker world started to buzz. In the hours that followed, Ivey, in a series of Facebook updates, released a statement indicating that he will not be playing any events of the 2011 WSOP and that he was suing Tiltware, the owner of Full Tilt Poker, for $150 million. Initially viewed with skepticism but confirmed by his agent later, Ivey was dead serious that he could no longer stand on the sidelines while his poker peers suffered at the hands of Full Tilt Poker. In this video, we examine the events that led to the biggest poker lawsuit and the subsequent aftermath. The World Series of Poker without Ivey was like Wimbledon without Rafael Nadal or the Masters without Tiger Woods in his prime. So, this was a big deal at that time. These were the events that transpired after the Full Tilt Poker scam. I have made a detailed video about the scam that you will find in the description. In short, on April 2011, the FBI indicted the founders of the three largest internet poker companies and accused the companies of deceiving US banks into processing billions of dollars in payments to be disguised as payments to hundreds of non-existent online merchants and other businesses. The US government ultimately barred Full Tilt Poker from allowing anyone in the United States from playing online poker for real money. Despite prosecutors' claims that players would recoup the money, Phil Ivey said $150 million was still unaccounted for. Here is what Phil Ivey's statement read. I am deeply disappointed and embarrassed that Full Tilt players have not been paid the money they're owed. I am equally embarrassed that as a result, many players would not be able to compete in tournaments and have suffered economic harm. I am not playing in the World Series of Poker as I do not believe it is fair that I compete when others cannot. I am doing everything I can to seek a solution to the problem as quickly as possible. My name and reputation have been dragged through the mud through the inactivity and indecision of others, and on behalf of all poker players, I refuse to remain silent any longer. I have electronically filed a lawsuit against Tiltware related to the unsettled player accounts. As I am sure the public can imagine, this was not an easy decision for me. I wholeheartedly refuse to accept non-action as to repayment of players' funds, and I am angered that people who have supported me throughout my career have been treated so poorly. As expected, Phil Ivey filed suit against Tiltware LLC, a suit suggesting he was trying to distance himself from the company's alleged ties to illegal online gambling. In their lawsuit, attorneys for Phil Ivey said that after entering an endorsement deal with Tiltware in February of 2004 for legal online poker, no one from Tiltware advised Ivey that Full Tilt Poker had used fraudulent methods to avoid banking restrictions in transferring funds as alleged by the Justice Department. They also said that according to the Justice Department, online poker companies have been provided repeated warnings and clear notice that their conduct was illegal in the US, but that Ivey was not advised of these warnings. Phil Ivey charges in the suit that poker players have been making comments that professionals associated with Full Tilt should not appear in the World Series of Poker and that Ivey should pay the owed players' funds personally. The lawsuit stated that Ivey has suffered public ridicule, humiliation, and loss of personal and professional reputation. The lawsuit sought an injunction barring Tiltware from enforcing the non-compete terms in his endorsement deal, as Ivey has several other potential endorsement and business opportunities in the poker world and he cannot be deprived of his livelihood. Phil Ivey at that time was at the peak of his career and wanted to have options to pursue other opportunities if they come up, and Full Tilt Poker had initially denied his request. As a result, Ivey sought at least $150 million in damages from Full Tilt Poker's owner, alleging breach of contract and tortious and negligent interference with prospective economic damage. After the lawsuit, Phil Ivey received immediate support from his fans who praised him for standing up against Full Tilt Poker. On the other hand, Full Tilt was shocked by Ivey's lawsuit. Howard Lederer was furious and claimed that the lawsuit was not feasible given that Full Tilt had very little cash on hand and its assets were steadily declining in value. Phil Ivey wanted the freedom to approach other sites which would presumably give him leverage with Full Tilt. However, Ivey also wanted to retain his shares in Full Tilt. From Howard's perspective, the company was in peril and the assets were the only means to pay the customers. Howard accused that Ivey was asking them to weaken the value of their assets at a critical time of need. He also mentioned that there was very little chance that Phil Ivey would be hired by any other company before Full Tilt issues had been resolved. Regarding the fact about Ivey taking a stand against Full Tilt, Howard countered by saying that Ivey had selfish intentions and he was not speaking out for anybody except himself. He had a moral obligation to the poker community to do everything he could to, at the very least, avoid damaging the company from which he had greatly profited. Lederer claimed that Ivey's lawsuit hastened the company's demise and greatly complicated the company's ability to repay its customers. Full Tilt had been searching for a bridge loan to cover all players' funds, and Phil Ivey's statement has hurt their chances to do so. It is a lot harder to get an investment in a poker site whose most marketable player is making damning public statements against them. It was also uncovered that Phil Ivey had borrowed at least $10 million from Full Tilt Poker over the course of 18 loans shown on his account transactions notes. Ivey was able to pay off about $4 million, which meant he still had a little over $6 million in debt. These transactions revealed the nature of Phil Ivey's relationship with Full Tilt Poker and how the poker site handled its money and how the owners paid themselves. Negreanu said that he admired Ivey's willingness to give up something like the WSOP, which was really important to him for what he thought was principally right. However, not everyone agreed with Ivey. Andrew Roble wrote in his blog that Phil Ivey was one of the primary equity holders of Full Tilt and has profited of their business more than almost anyone. If he cared about the players, he would pledge to return every cent of the millions of dollars he made from Full Tilt to other players, just as Tom Dwan has done. Mike Matusow took a stand against Ivey on Twitter, saying, "Just read this Ivey lawsuit, what a big bunch of bullcrap from a person that cares only about himself, not any players." Full Tilt's reaction was swift and furious, and the response was less than amiable. They stated, "Contrary to his sanctimonious public statements, Phil Ivey's meritless lawsuit is about helping just one player, himself. In an effort to fully enrich himself at the expense of others, Mr. Ivey appears to have timed his lawsuit to thwart pending deals with several parties that would put money back in players' pockets. In fact, Mr. Ivey has been invited and has declined to take actions that could assist the company in these efforts, including paying back a large sum of money he owes the site." Tiltware doubts Mr. Ivey's frivolous and self-serving lawsuit will ever get to court, but if it does, the company looks forward to presenting facts demonstrating that Mr. Ivey is putting his own narrow financial interests ahead of the players he professes to help. On June 30th, it was revealed that Ivey voluntarily dismissed his lawsuit without prejudice. Ivey's lawyer, David Chesnoff, made a public statement explaining that Mr. Ivey intends to dismiss his lawsuit as he believes Full Tilt is taking steps to see that players are paid. It was rumored that Full Tilt chanced upon a deal with a bunch of European investors, and one of the clauses in their agreement, as it turned out, was for Ivey to drop the lawsuit. So he did. Even though Phil Ivey's lawsuit could have severely devalued the company's assets, Ivey was ultimately appointed to a board seat along with Andy Block and Phil Gordon, essentially sweeping the previous board out with a member vote. Howard Lederer explained that a group led by Phil Gordon and his attorney believed that the prior board had actively participated in creating the 9-figure shortfall. After a majority vote by the owners, the old board was to be removed and Ray Bitar would be replaced as CEO. Phil Ivey did not return to poker until November of 2011 when he played in the APT stop in Macau.